Welcome to the Echelon AI podcast, the show where we explore the future of professional services as they're transformed by AI and share practical strategies to help businesses and professionals thrive. I'm your host, David, founder of Echelon AI. At Echelon, we help professional service businesses scale using the latest technologies to seize a competitive advantage and leap ahead in this fast-paced world. On the show with us today is Seth Zaremba, CEO and founder of Be Atomic. With over 25 years of experience in the insurance industry, Seth has founded multiple successful companies, including as a co-founder at a market access provider that was sold and an independent agency he built and sold to private equity in 2022. Now, at Be Atomic, Seth is focused on revolutionizing how independent agents and brokers approach efficiency and technology to survive and thrive in a rapidly changing industry. Seth, it's great to have you on the show today.
David, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
It is a pleasure. Now, you have a pretty fascinating background, from what you described as following the Grateful Dead to factory work to building multiple successful insurance businesses. Could you share a little bit about that journey and how it shaped your personal perspective in the industry?
Yeah, not a direct path to where I'm at today at all. Although I find non-traditional is becoming more traditional these days, isn't it? Yeah, always building stuff, which was common. I grew up the home of a home builder. A son of a home builder. I ended up in manufacturing, so a lot of welding and steel fitting and stuff like that, and just became fascinated with the construction process. And when I ended up in professional services, I found that it was just a bunch of processes that had never been thought through in a manufacturing or construction type of way. And so it was really interesting as you were handed these manuals of what to do, as you started to question them of like, well, why do we do this? And it's like, because that's what I was told to do. And so bringing that kind of background of like, hey, manufacturing process matters, cost matters, efficiency matters, and technology and an optimization of process really matters in every business of scale. And so when I landed in professional services quite in an untraditional way, I found that none of that existed. And so the businesses that I started building in the insurance space over the last 25 years have all been around optimizing process, efficiency, and really addressing the macros by efficient solutions, most of which start with technology.
Fantastic. Now, of course, you didn't start as a business owner within insurance, but what was that inflection point where you realized that you really wanted to and needed to create something of your own rather than, just working within the existing structures?
Yeah, well, so if there is insurance privilege, I did not come from it. So there was no silver spoon. So when you're starting in any industry, you've got to do for yourself. And when you don't have the resources of legacy, of reputation, or of the scale that comes with generational businesses, you have to apply what's happening in the moment today as your leverage point or as your advantage point. And so for me, as I started to look at it, it was like, okay, with none of those assets in my portfolio, how could I leverage what's happening in the marketplace to appear different, to build scale underneath these traditional businesses, and to appear and to perform differently than traditional businesses? And so oftentimes the only edge you have as a startup or new one is doing the thing that isn't being done. And so that's always the tool that I go to first when I'm looking at business opportunities.
That's very interesting. Now, you were talking there about appearing different to other people, right? And standing out within the market. That outward perspective isn't where you started, right? I mean, you mentioned with your time, even in manufacturing, you're starting to question, why are we doing things like this, right? Perhaps you're thinking there's got to be a better way to do this. So when you came into the insurance industry, is that something that you started to analyze and see as well, that, hey, maybe these things could be done differently? Or is that something that you kind of grew into over time?
No, I came in right away in the insurance industry, or I'll say any professional services industry, David, because I know Echelon serves multiple industries. Any professional services industry has this mindset that will make it up in volume, right? That I can outsize my profits to fit, to right size or justify as my organization. And no disrespect, many have. But the profit that existed in professional service is shrinking now, and I think is going away. And so because it worked doesn't mean it will. And so this mentality of like, hey, don't worry about what things cost, don't worry how long it takes to get done. Because of my skill or my reputation, I can outsize revenue to justify the existence of my operations. Intelligence technology is stripping that away. And so as what you see is profitability is going down. And in all industries where profitability starts to shrink, an examination of the operation becomes relevant. So for a guy like me who was walking into it, who had that mindset from the beginning, it made it easy just to say, no, a product will never be profitable if none of the parts or the processes are. And that's really the difference or the mentality that I brought to professional services. And I think the macros are starting to feed the logic of make it up in volume is becoming a myth.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and make it up in volume might work in times of economic boom and prosperity, but especially as we're entering into recessions and more challenges, you can't just survive by doing that, or you've got to not get a little bit more creative, but maybe get a little bit more intentional. Can you speak to that a little bit as well?
Yeah, well, and I'll speak to my industry, insurance specifically, because I think it's such a dramatic example of this. So let's look at the macros of insurance in this we'll make it up thing. There's three basic players in the insurance space. There's the customer, the insurance agent or broker, and then the carrier. Right? Two of the three have platformed and said, we're solving it ourselves first. And so the customer has platformed an insurance and they've made their choice of two platforms, Apple or Android, right? And so they've said, if it doesn't come to me on my platform, I'm not interested in interacting with it. Ask your kids if they want to call an insurance agent or broker, right? The carriers, insurance carriers, had to platform as well. So no longer could they have these home-built systems that are sitting in their basements as part of their rating. To get acceptable ratings, the industry said, hey, you've got to have an infrastructure, a platform that caps all your data models, provides it for underwriting and policy issuance and things like that to be rated as a high-quality business. And so the customer's platform. So think about that. I mean, the carriers. So you have the customer's platform, you have the carrier's platform, and the cord that connects to two soup cans is the independent agent and broker who hasn't. And we are still solving it with, we'll throw people at it. We'll throw at all the inefficiencies of the things the platforms don't want to do. We'll just solve it with the old model. And it does not work. It will not scale. And if we're playing musical chairs and two of the seats have been taken for the three people playing, well, then we've got a problem. And so that's the reality for insurance agents and brokers in this space, is that the macros have already made their choices and we're the last people at the dance without a chair. We better get serious about efficiency, operations, and connectivity as a solution.
Now, with that being said, tell us a little bit about the atomic and what sort of problems you're solving with those things in mind.
Yeah, so think about that dilemma. The insurance broker in the middle has decreasing revenue and increasing complexity because they have the expectation of the customer, I want it right now. And then they have the realities of the carrier, which is we've solved our problem. And one of the ways we solved it is by you hiring people to hand key data into our systems so that we get data volume and quality and structure at your expense. And so Atomic says, wait a second, that's not going to work. And so we're focused on process automation. So how can we streamline the repetitive processes that are happening inside of an organization? Think of it, over 10 billion times a year, a customer calls up an independent agent broker and says, hey, I want to change a red Chevy to a blue Chevy, right? So there's these requests that are coming in manual and they have to be put into these systems. And so not being able to throw people at it realistically anymore, we're focused on creating one structure to those processes. So high volume processes that can be done more efficiently through automation. And then also, how can we take the non-essential components of that work and start to leverage technology, intelligence to be able to perform that? So no longer do you have to have 60 people in bullpens doing this work, that you can have 5 to 10 highly trained, compensated people working on important issues, and then automations and processes and connectivity and intelligence solving this stuff, which is really just keying and moving data.
Sounds like this is a pretty dynamic and comprehensive platform that you're bringing to brokers and agents. What sort of clients do you like to work with? Is it on the smaller side of the business, or smaller companies, smaller agencies and brokerages? Or is this something that's built a little bit more with larger carriers or larger agencies and brokerages in mind?
Traditional question, but I'll give you a non-traditional answer. We started to think about it that way too, especially when you raise money or you're looking at growth, you think of the TAM, right? So which brokers or agents can we go after? We step back after that because it's the same problem of scale and the same macros affecting both. And so, well, wait a second, rather than focus on the size of the broker, let's focus on the things they do. And that scales across everything. So if you're a 3-person agency and you do 100, you've got similar issues as someone who's got 3,000 doing 1 million. billion. And so we look at the TAM as the things being done. And so I think we're the first company in insurance to say the TAM is of things done is 10 to 15 billion processes that all could benefit from scale and technology. And we've been left by the two other parties at the dance floor to solve it for ourselves. Nobody's thinking about it this way. Let's scale those 15 billion things together and really now offer the benefits of that scale to large, medium, and small alike.
And you mentioned over 15 billion different processes across the board, right? And this is your total addressable market. But you also have identified, I believe, 27 unique processes within the insurance agency, and your platform focuses on solving each of these. Is that right?
Yeah, and this is the other thing that I hope your podcast really starts to enlighten the listener to is we think about our businesses as so complex and so unique to us because we live in a certain place or we do a certain thing. It's not. Oftentimes that myth allows us to not get down into the weeds and look at automation, process, technology, and intelligence to solve it. So we started looking at all the transactions that were coming through our platform, and it became very clear that they were just repetitive, that no matter who you are, no matter where you were at, you were just changing a car to a car, adding and removing a driver, adding and removing something from a policy. And so as we began to catalog that, which has now become our product catalog, is saying like, okay, there's roughly 27 processes that happen 15 billion times a year. Now that we can think about it in a finite number, let's start leveraging technology intelligence to solve the ones that are the biggest problems, the hardest to hire for, the easiest to scale for intelligence connectivity, and then we can expand through that platform. And so I guess what I would say is for all people listening to this, think about the unit increment of what's done as opposed to the big mess of things that gets done in a daily or annual basis.
Yeah, and on the unit increment, the cost behind it. You and I spoke the other day, and you mentioned over a $30 transaction cost for manual processes versus, pennies with AI-enabled processes. How are agents and brokers responding to this reality when you connect with them?
It's awesome. So we actually, if you go to beatomic.com, we came up with a cost per transaction calculator because there needs to be, just like in 8th grade when you had to get that scientific calculator to go into advanced math, the cost per transaction calculator for our industry didn't exist. And so in order to show this, we had to create it. And so just as an example of how we arrived there, and I'm using rough numbers here, but in America, if you hire someone at $50,000 a year, we could see that they work 260 days and they did 1,600 activities in a year, which means they're doing about 6.25 completed activities a day. So 50,000 divided by the 1,600 things shows around $30 to $33 a transaction. And so when you start to think of it that way, people are like, wait, I don't want to spend $30 for a vehicle change. It's like, okay, how many times is that happening with that person? Well, that's 1,000 of the 1,600. Is it repetitious? Is it just data movement? Okay, what other solutions can we introduce into a workflow to take that off of their plate so that they can work on more high value transactions where we're talking to the customer and advising it, and process automation technology and intelligence can solve those things.
So this is a pretty unique approach that you're taking to an age-old industry, one that's pretty, let's say, standardized in other ways and outdated, and it's not properly standardized, we could say. And when you entered this, or when you started Be Atomic with this initial total TAM, total addressable market in mind, you were thinking in that traditional way. What size of client do we want to target? Who do we want to work with? But then there was a shift as well to the TAM is actually the number of processes that need to be automated. After pivoting your approach or having that change in perspective or the shift of mindset, how have things changed for you in connecting with potential clients? Because surely that was a pretty big shift in how you also brought your offer to the market.
The challenge of a startup, right? Oftentimes you're working on the right things the wrong way. Oftentimes you're saying the wrong things about the right way. And it takes that time to mature in what you're doing, how you're going to do it, and the value to the marketplace. And so, we solved on the solution. But part of our problem was we still asked people to say, well, listen, in order to, if you believe us, you've got to adopt this platform wholly and completely. Well, professional services system changes are hard to do, right? There's always a part of any industry that's willing to do it, and we've done well there. But part of the challenge then became how, for those people who aren't ready to overhaul their systems to take advantage of this, how could we take this technology and this thinking to the systems they have? And that's really the pivot that's helped us, is saying, hey, let's go back to people on legacy systems. Let's not ask them to change to adopt. Let's adapt to what we're doing to how they work, and put the services in workflows that they're accustomed to, so that change management isn't such a heavy issue, and so that they can see the benefit, leverage the benefit of cost per transaction thinking in workflows that don't upset or disrupt an organization. And that's really been the traction moment that we caught last year, and that we are riding the wave of this year.
So it sounds like you have a lot of things that really stand you out in the market and make you unique. Of course, everything about what you're saying is unique.
Mm-hmm.
But for the people who are resistant to change, whether it's individuals within an organization or maybe even the business or the company leaders, how is it maybe that you position yourself differently to them when they might be akin, or what they might be prone to just bundling you in with these other automation providers?
Yeah, and we'll probably talk more about this, but the challenge is the threat to the human worker, the trusted advisor, the person the business was built on. And so oftentimes when we're having this conversation about process automation or intelligence, we don't spend enough time talking about the humans, and how by burdening them with high volume repetitive tasks that we decrease their value. We decrease their value to their customers, for which your business is built on. We decrease their internal value, how they see themselves, I mean, if you ask me every day to show up and just dig a hole, and I just dig a hole for 30 years, I don't know that I'm fulfilled. But if you ask me to think about building things and doing things, I have much more value. And then we don't think enough about how they feel and how the customer feel, the impact it has on the business. And so I think now when we show up, we say, listen, math is math, and trust me, the math will math. But let's talk about how you can transition this way, and the reward and the impact it has on your customers, on your people, and on your net cash in business, and really help them think through the value of adopting things like this, and that idea that optimized humans are going to be so much better for your business, so much better for your customer, and so much better for themselves in the short, mid, and long run, that you really need to think about this and consider it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, that's a whole lot to think about. With being a startup, you mentioned certain challenges of being a startup, right? I mean, not just bringing your product to market and finding that right fit, having people understand it, but perhaps even in a situation such as yours, almost being too good to be true at times as well, right? You have the challenges of resistance to change within organizations, but you also have the challenge of really being able to connect with the right people who understand what you are at first, especially if you're solving the right problems in the wrong way, let's say initially, or how it is that you phrased it. So how is it that you find, what's been most successful for you in connecting with potential clients who see the value in what you do?
Yeah, and as a founder, you want to solve everything. And as any founder listening knows, if you talk to your customers and prospects about solving everything, you solve nothing, right? And so you sound just like the miracle elixir standing at the end of town that can cure cancer and anything else that comes along, right? And that's not where we want to be seen, because we know we have valuable solutions that can help the marketplace on that. And so we've really had to narrow our talk track and our product down to the things that really stand out. So for instance, where we're at now is, hey, what do you hate to do? What are the things that suck the life out of you, your people, your customers, and the business? Well, 65% of what a service person does in the insurance space is just repetitive processes. You can no longer hire those people. People don't want to do those jobs anymore. And so we've reached that moment where we have focused it down to the things that stink, to the things that you cannot hire for, and we can solve those things. And so, for instance, in our business, 65% of what a customer service rep does is just 5 processes. And so our current marketing and talk track says, hey, David, for every million of payroll you have, 650,000 of it goes into something that automation and technology can solve, that your people hate, and that you can't hire for. Can we have a conversation about those 5 things? And that has changed the trajectory of our conversation.
Amazing. How is it you're reaching people then? Is this through like traditional marketing approaches with pay per click? Is it email? Is it networking and speaking at events? I believe is one of your strongest.
Yes, yes. So we're actively email marketing, which is great, and we're targeting software systems. So hey, you're on this legacy system, we can help you. Your system, our button can change your business, right? So that's going on. I love to speak, as you can tell. I'm passionate about this stuff, so I can typically whip a room into a frenzy and get them going. But I would also say that the thing when you, and this is a founder moment for me too. When you have it dialed and it's right, all of a sudden they call you, and that's really what's starting to happen. I was just on with a demo the other day, and the woman said, "Hey, we were just talking about you." I'm like, "Who's we?" And like, "Oh, me and 30 other agents just had a brain share meeting. Once a year, all these independent businesses get together, and the topic this year was your service and how you're doing it and what we could do." And I'm like, and she's like, they asked me to reach out to you and see if we could talk to you. And I was like, okay. So I think word of mouth, when you really hit it, when you know you've tapped the line, it's that type of stuff starts to happen. And we're getting that now. And it's exciting and any founder knows how exciting that moment is.
That's unbelievable. So you entered in the insurance industry over 30 years ago, Seth, with a mindset of what can we optimize? How can we do things better? Which you took from manufacturing, right? With time, you started your own companies. You saw purpose there. Now at Be Atomic, you're implementing these beliefs and these systems that perhaps have been with you for many years, and you've been optimizing as things go. You have an incredible offer, right? You're standing out in the market.
Yeah.
People are coming to you looking for solutions because of what you're doing. What's next for Be Atomic?
Well, to think of those 27 transactions for us, and I would suggest anybody think that way. What's the product category of things we can fix? We're focused on the 5 that hurt right now and that have massive opportunity in terms of volume. But those transactions are high volume but low cost. So it's a huge TAM, but it's not the most valuable stuff. And so as we look at where we go next, it's like, how can we leverage intelligence to start going into the other ones? And these transactions are no longer $30 a transaction. They're 80, 100, $150. They happen less frequently, but they're more expensive. They require maybe API. They require AI and intelligence. They require a human who's connected through systems. And so for us, it's really about gaining traction on the low-hanging fruit and then working our way up and adding value to our customers in other transactions that really do affect the business. And those are in sales, those are in service, right? And so it's a wide breadth of opportunity that we have to be able to leverage intelligence into process so that we can change and transform these agencies that are going to have to face the macros at some point.
That's fantastic. I have to ask on AI as well, Seth. I mean, with where you are now, it's a super exciting time, right? You have a place in the market, you have a plan for moving forwards. How much of a role or an impact has AI played to get you to this position?
It's everything now. If you think about a transaction in the insurance space, it often involves data around voice. Hey David, this is Seth. I want to change this car to that car. Great. Well, how's it going? So voice is data. It almost always, especially around business communication, involves text and email, right? And so now there's these written communications. Hey, I bought a new building and here's the address and here's how much I paid. And then there's these manual processes that are kind of forced on agents and brokers and stuff like that. So if you think about that, it's ripe for disruption with intelligence, because now we know that intelligence can listen to that conversation, read that transcript or hear it, and process out of it, right? We know that email being such a heavy communication in insurance and professional services, that text can populate or empower an AI agent to go perform that work, right? And so for us, the fields are white for harvesting when it comes to leveraging workflows which have spoken, written, word data, and then process information, leveraging intelligence to enable that person to no longer have to do 11 minutes of work post call, to just simply say, this is what we heard, this is what we read. If you agree with it, why don't we just process it for you? It's a gift to them. It speeds up for the customer and it lowers the cost for the business going forward. And so for us, intelligence is the way to optimize humans so that they can spend the most valuable time they have doing the things that means the most. And that's really how it has gotten us where we're at. And increasingly, intelligence with APIs will replace the need for people to have to hand key or enter or document these things into systems.
So earlier you mentioned as well the belief that, AI isn't going to replace an entire workforce, right? But it's going to really empower and amplify the few best players out there to do more than they ever could otherwise. How do you see the role of human agents evolving as more processes become automated.
Yeah, I think the humans become so much more valuable. And we've already seen it. When you adopt intelligence and connectivity, humans actually pay goes up. So we just saw in our business as we were going through this, as we integrated processes and made them more efficient, the service team made 13.8% more. Because you can't let somebody who's dealing with your customers making decisions for the business when they want and deserve pay increases, they should be there. And the efficiencies created in processing by intelligence and connectivity generate the revenue to invest in it. And so the first thing is humans will make more and they're more valuable. Now it's going to be what they do. And here's where I think my background matters. I've actually stood on December 26th at a home that burned down with the people crying in the driveway. And there's no AI bot that's going to go do that. I've delivered a life insurance check to a widow who thought she was going to have to pull her two kids out of private school after her husband, who was the operator of the business, passed. Right? And so if you think about it, insurance as a solution now with humans in the moments that matter, where advice is needed, where direction is needed, where heck, a shoulder to cry on or a beer to pour is needed, humans will be there doing that. And because they're not changing and entering things into systems, they will be more mobile. They'll be more in front of customers, talking to customers all the time, interacting with them, building relationships. And that's really where the value of businesses should be and will go in the future. And the margin shift will generate that kind of opportunity.
I think it's a fantastic perspective. I have to agree with all of that. I would say the person-to-person human interaction relationships, they're not going to go anywhere. If anything, they're going to become more desired, more valuable, right? Because even if an AI can communicate in a similar way to a human, right, people will know that it's not a human. There's no warmth there. As you said, there's no real empathy and true understanding. Right now, with what you're doing, you mentioned a lot of processes for automation on the internal side of things. I'm kind of curious, have you explored anything for AI-powered lead generation or client acquisition that have been effective for you as well?
Yeah, so we, if you think about lead generation in 2025 for insurance, it's a lot different than the old days. Now, that's not to say the old ways are bad, right? You can still do a lot with a postcard if it's sequenced with other things. And so, if you think about data and intelligence for lead generation, and this is one that we see that we used in our business and in the insurance agency business that we see going forward is where the customer's at. And so, the idea that the customer is at home anymore and that you can reach them at home, call them at their business when they're at their desk, it doesn't work that way. Nobody's where we think they are 20 years ago today. And so, for instance, where is a trucker when they need to cross county lines? They're waiting at a scale. So now a trucker who you're trying to call or talk to is not sitting at a desk. They're not in their maintenance garage somewhere. They're literally in a line with 200 other truckers for an hour and a half waiting to go on a scale. Where should you be marketing to them? At when they're sitting in that line. And so think about geofencing and the use of data to understand where the customer is at and when they have an hour and a half wait in a cab of a truck with nothing to do. That is the optimal time when they're scrolling their phone to say, hey, insurance is an issue and you've got a minute, let's talk. And so I think as you think about intelligence and connectivity, it's really now we can take our valuable service and talk to the customer when and where they're at, which is, I think, the most exciting thing that you can do. And if you have the systems that can introduce it to a human who has insurance expertise, knowledge, marketplace access, boom, you've just created fire. And that is where agents, professional services need to be thinking.
Fantastic. Seth, for Be Atomic, with everything considered, how much you're using AI, how much you're looking forwards to right now, today, if there was one major challenge that you could solve using AI, what would that challenge be?
Yeah, I would say data entry and process. And it sounds so boring, David. And I know people are like in their car right now, just like driving off the road, but we can no longer pay people to key stuff in from one system to another system on that thing. And so at Be Atomic, we're saying, listen, wherever a carrier will allow us to use an API, we're going to move data from that with voice or with email without having to have a human key it in. We're going to train bots. If you make us enter your systems through bots, we're going to train AI agents specifically to do that and high volume structured data. We're the perfect solution for that, where an independent business doesn't have the volume or the structure to do it. But the challenge for us is training those things, and it's a training mechanism. And so we still staff people. And so we have AI agents, but we also have agents that are manually processing those things so that we can train the bots and we can create the scales to earn the APIs from the insurance carriers. We have to lower the cost per transaction for the people that stand between the customer and the carrier. And getting the insurance world to understand that the problems of the insurance agent and broker are really the problems of everyone has been a challenge, but I feel like I'm winning that war.
Yeah, I would say so. That's very neat, very cool. If there was one message that you want our listeners to take away about preparing their businesses for the AI revolution, what would it be?
I would say there's 3 things. Start with data. Too often we start with hunches or the things we heard or the things we read in our news feed, and we haven't examined it in our business. Make data-driven decisions. If you start there, the likelihood to success will go up. Number 2, ignore the replacement myth. It's an optimization opportunity. And so as we think about intelligence, AI agents, it is not a replacement threat to your organization. It is an optimization opportunity that will be done to you or by you. And I would suggest a business should do it for themselves. And then finally, I would tell people to create 2 budgets or performas this year. I would say, hey, do your traditional budget or performa process over the next year. But this year, I want you to look at repetitive processes and the staff to do it, and imagine a world where those people aren't there. I want you to look at the net cash, the available cash that creates, which is hundreds, if not thousands, millions of dollars, and then say, now which technologies will enable that to happen and how can I bring them in? If you just do those 3 things, the likelihood of success goes up, the fear and shock and awe of change goes away within the organization, and the real dollars and opportunities this creates for business owners start to become more visible and real to you. And then it's just finding good vendors and partners like Echelon or Be Atomic or any of us. And that's where I would tell people to start.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, your story, and your thoughts with the audience today.
No, I appreciate it. Thank you, David. I appreciate the opportunity. And I love what you're doing in this space. And so you got a believer in me.
Thank you so much. Greatly appreciated. Seth, for our listeners who have connected with your message today, what's the best way for them to reach out to learn more about your solutions or get in touch?
Yeah, beatomic.com. You can find the cost per transaction calculator there and more about our services. You can follow us on LinkedIn where we spend a fair amount of time, or just hit me at seth@beatomic.com. I would love to continue the conversation.
Amazing. To the listeners, thank you for tuning into the Echelon AI podcast. As always, I hope this episode has brought you valuable insight, knowledge, and its inspiration. If it did, please would you show your support by liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Until next time, we're signing off.